Today's selection will be I Am Redeemed.
The oracles of the UCI. 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 11. But the end of all things is at hand. Be you therefore sober, and watch unto prayer. And above all things have fervent love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. As every man has received the gift, even so minister the same one to another as good stewards of the manifold grace of Elohim. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of Elohim. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which Elohim gives, that Elohim in all things may be glorified through Yahshua the Mashiach, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 29 through chapter 5 and verse 4. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of Elohim, whereby you are sealed until the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be you kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Elohim for Yahshua's sake has forgiven you. Be you therefore followers of Elohim, as dear children, and walk in love, as the Mashiach also have loved us, and has given himself for us an offering and sacrifice to Elohim for a sweet-smelling savor. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becomes saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather given of thanks. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Keep your foot when you go to the house of Elohim, and be more ready to hear, than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before Elohim. For Elohim is in heaven, and you upon earth, therefore let your words be few. Exodus chapter 23, verses 20 and 21. Behold, I send an angel before you, to keep you in the way, and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Revelations chapter 3, verses 20 through 22. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him, and he with me. To him that overcomes will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I have also overcame and am sat down with my Father in his throne. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches.
All right, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Which is peace on Yahweh's holy Sabbath day. Welcome to another holy convocation that Yahweh has enjoined unto us here in Stone Mountain, Georgia. As we know, we're getting closer to our holy days, and we end up getting a lot of communication about the understanding of those days and when to keep those days. And if you end up going out on the internet, you're gonna run into a lot of different people that keep their days differently. They're gonna keep their days at different times, and a lot of times we end up being persuaded by a lot of these things, because when it gets right down to it, we really don't ask the questions that we ought to ask, and sometimes we don't ask the right people. A lot of times we're gonna ask our friends and start talking to them about the things of the holy days, and they're just getting in it just like you. They've been in it 2 weeks before you, and you asking them to explain certain things of the holy days. So it is an interesting thing, though, as you start to go out and look at the various things that people have. Honestly, I don't go out looking for things. When people run into something and they'll say, Pre-Soc, I got a question about such and such, and they'll direct me to it, then I'll go look at it, and then I'll go tell them, okay, well, this is why I think this is acceptable, or why I don't think this is acceptable. And it won't be, what I think, feel, and believe. I'm going to tell you how I got to that conclusion and what scriptures I read and what I based that on. So there are always, when we get down to the parts of keeping our holy days, you're going to find a vast difference in days. And one of the things is, although you're going to hear a lot of these, groups talking about their Hebrew Israelites, they basically follow the dictates of the Jewish. And when you look at all of their things and then you look at what the Jewish do, it is hand in hand, almost verbatim. And this is what our people have a tendency to do. We have a tendency to latch on to whoever has the most prominence at that particular time. So this is why the nations still do the same things that they did during the time of the Mashiach. They still do the same thing today. The governments go about to put a figurehead in place so that everybody can follow that figurehead. But what's happening is they're controlling the figurehead. This is why we have the issue of the Bin Ladens and the Iraq and all of that. What happens? They put somebody in place, but as soon as that leader decides that he doesn't want to be completely a puppet and controlled, then it's time to set up another war. But these were the same people that were put in office and trained by this government. They are doing the same things that their forefathers of Europe did before in putting up figureheads. During the time of the Mashiach, the temple was a facade of a temple. It had the fake rulership there because that is what was used to control Israel. That's why it was a constant battle between Yeshua and the priests. The priests were figureheads. They were put in place by the ruling authority. So nowadays we're facing the same things. Our people get ready to go and find out some things about their salvation, and they go, and this is what we do. We run to the biggest congregation we can find. They say, oh, these people got a dome. Look at that. That's beautiful. Look at that. They got 10,000 members. Right. They're figureheads being controlled by other individuals. And that's the part that we have to come to and figure out. But I think the interesting part is, as we got into Hebrew Israelite teaching, it never did occur to us that we were going to still run into figureheads, even of smaller organizations, that they are actually being controlled by larger entities and being told what to teach. So we're going to begin today's sermon in Exodus chapter 12, and we're going to start with verses 1 through 3. And normally I'm not going to say every other, but every couple of new moons, we will go over all of the things of explaining what the new moon is. Now, we're going over these things because this next new moon, we're not going over anything. This next new moon is going to be our new year, and we party. Okay? So whatever you gonna learn, pay attention today. Cause I ain't reading nothing. It's a new moon. We not and it's Friday night. This is the only chance you're gonna get to hang out on Friday night. You understand what I'm saying to you? So I'm working on my class in advance. I'm not leaving here. We gonna stay here and hang out. Okay? So we gonna get all this covered before we get there. Alright? So if you got any questions about new moon and new year, I will be answering it with a cup of wine in my hand on New Year. Just know that. I ain't opening no book. This is our new year. We gonna enjoy it. So learn and pay attention today. Alright? Exodus chapter 12. Start that at verse 1.
And Yahweh spake unto Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you.
This shall be the first month of the year unto you. And we understand that when Yahweh begins something, there's growth. There were things happening. We understand that that could have never been January. We know that in January, everything is cold and dead. This is the beginning of the heathen new year, and they are glorifying their two-headed god Janus. That is what January was named after. Okay, so we already know that this is something different. We're gonna have to define a few things so that we completely understand what's going on here. Keep reading.
Speak you unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house.
So then we know that then the time that this Passover is happening, we know that this then is the beginning of our months. We know that this is our new year. Now the heathen has already celebrated their new year. And they had everything attached to it. They had their watch night service so that they can celebrate the two-headed God that looks into the past and in the future. And all of these people went to church on that night thinking that they were doing something holier than the people who went out at the club. They were all worshiping the same God. So it didn't matter whether you worshiped him at church or whether you worshiped him at the club. It was the same God. So now we understand what our year is. Now we have to make sure that we understand the definition. In verse 2, it says this month. Brother, read that definition on the next graphic.
Month, H2320 Hebrew. The word is Kodesh. From H2318, the new moon, by implication a month.
Right, so then a new moon is a month. So when you understand the things that Yahweh gave unto us, we didn't need pencil and paper or somebody else's book to be able to figure out what our days were. Yahweh gave us all the signs in the heavens. This is how our people eventually got to worshiping the heavens. Understand, they're having to look into the heavens to track all of their days. This is how they know whether they're dealing, where they are in the month, where they are in the year, because when you look at these things on a regular basis, you notice the changes. So they are accustomed to watching this. This is immediately from the beginning. But what got to going on is now we're watching so much and now we're picking, well, you know what, if you connect those two dots like that, it's like a horse. Yeah, and you know, if you draw a little line going under there, it look like a sword. Yeah, I'm going to worship that. So now we done went too far with it. He gave it to us for a reason, but we're going to use it for another reason. Go ahead and read. Let's read that root word of where that Kodesh comes from.
Comes from Kodesh, from H2318, a primitive root to be new, causatively to rebuild, renew, or repair.
So then when we go to renew, Kodesh, when something starts, understand how everything began. It was in darkness, then it began. Now, that's very important, and I'm going to tell you why that's important. Because now we have people or organizations that are putting out teachings that their new moon is actually the full moon. And now that's why you have, we're getting some of these questions about certain things that really sound really strange coming back to back. But we're going to get to that. So the whole part of Kodesh comes from Kadash, which is to be rebuild, renew. So it was darkness. He said, let there be light. This is the beginning. All of that starts in darkness. We know that when our days begin, they begin in darkness. So this is why what we're talking about Friday night is when we will observe our new year. But we're going to get back to that. Go ahead, bro.
And if you just go by the primitive of meaning of the word, then obviously your full moon could not be the beginning of the month because it's complete.
Yes, it's not being renewed. You know, you know, you don't. You know, you give birth to a child. You don't give birth to a 30-year-old dude. Come out, you know what I'm saying? He got a goatee and everything. What is that? That ain't just now, you know, coming into this earth. You know, if your baby got a full-grown beard, you need to be asking somebody some questions. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. But we're going to get into why and what would be the reason for doing such a thing. Because although it just seems like it's some strange, just arbitrary thing, there's a little method to that madness. And it matches some other things that have taken place on the earth. Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 14 through 18.
And Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years."
So then in Genesis, before anything has been established, there is no nation of Israel. Okay? Yahweh has orchestrated, this is how you're going to keep your time and your seasons based on these things that are in the heavens. He has already declared this. Okay? This is then what you would call a universal law. This law is not specific to Israel. There is no Israel, and here is a universal law on the earth. Right here. Let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And we're going to go through each one of those. Go ahead.
And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And Elohim set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good.
All right. Let's go to, brother, read this next graphic here, the note here, so that we can explain a few things.
The month is determined by the moon's orbit around the earth, which takes roughly 29 days. This orbit gives us our moon phases. Recently, we received a question about the full moon new year.
Now, I need you to think about what was the question was about the full moon new year, which is some words that should never be beside each other. Those words should have fought each other in that sentence, and somebody should have got out. Full moon new year. Now, even the people, the organizations that are teaching this, all they got to do is back up in that same organization's teachings about 4 years, and they didn't teach full moon new year. We're talking about organizations that have been around 20 years. They just came up with a new thing of the full moon is the new moon. So then that meant that when there was this full moon a couple days ago, then that was their new year. And all you gotta do is back up about 4 years ago, and they taught something completely different, and taught something completely different for over a decade. Go ahead.
When we understand the phases of the moon, it explains this erroneous new teaching that has infected our people.
All right, so at the top part of the graphic, we see that there is a purple arrow showing that the moon is orbiting the earth. So we then look at, these things. We have the regular rotation of the earth, either away or toward the sun. And you see down at the bottom on the top half, you'll see, so this is two different graphics that we're looking at here. So let me make sure that you separate this part that's in dark at the bottom. That's a totally different graphic. So we're going to explain two things and make sure that we have the understanding of that. So you have the sun, and you have one part of the earth that's going to be lit at all times. As it rotates, then one part goes dark and then the other part becomes lit. All while that's happening, the moon is orbiting around the earth. So then that gets us to the bottom part of this graphic. So then when we look at this graphic on the right, we see this is where the sun is, where it says sunlight. Then, if you notice, right at that portion there, you see a lit part of the moon. A lit part of the moon there, but that's on the other side. Look in the middle where you see the earth lit up. This represents your perspective of looking. So you're on the earth at the lit part. This is the beginning of the month. So on your side, the moon is completely dark. The sun is behind it. The sun is lighting up the other side of the moon. It is not the part that you're seeing. So then as we go upward, we'll see waxing crescent. Now waxing means growing. So then as these phases, as it does this very thing that is doing in the graphic above, as it's orbiting, it is then changing its phase. So we can look at the moon and know where we are in our month. We will never need, we've gotten accustomed to always looking at our watch or something, our phone, to tell us what the day is and all of that. We can look up in the sky and tell where we are in our real month. So then as we get to the first quarter, we see half of this moon lit up, but it's on the right half of the moon. See, that tells you that you're in the beginning part of your month. So then as you keep going, it keeps growing and growing. Now, as you get to the opposite of new, you get a full moon. Now you see it's completely lit on the part that's visible from the earth. So this would be the middle of your month. So this is why I said it was very interesting in the people all of a sudden deciding that the new moon is the full moon. They're doing exactly what the adversary, the devil, did. Yahweh said the seventh day is blessed and holy. What did Lucifer do? He did the first day. That's not one day off. It is the exact opposite. So he sets up a completely opposite day and tell us that the opposite day is the one that we ought to be dealing with. So this teaching then is going to set all of our days off if we make the opposite so. But this is the thing that we have to pay attention to. If we go back to the right part where it says sunlight, and then you see the dark part of the moon, and then the earth, that is the beginning. That is alignment. Alignment is all of those things in order. If you go to the full moon as the beginning, they're dealing with the opposite alignment. Once again, we're taking what Yahweh did and turning it upside down. This is how the adversary operates. Go ahead, brother.
Brother, you got to look at how much closer we're coming to the end times, because the biggest thing to throw us all off the whole world was, like you said, giving us that first day. But as the knowledge is increasing in us as a people, and we're starting to want to keep these holy days and try to keep these holy days, now it's time to throw you off from these holy days and get you wrong. Because what was it, a couple years ago, the only thing we worried about was the new moon versus the sliver, which
Right.
would have thrown you a couple of days off.
Right.
That was the big debate.
Yep.
Now you go on to the complete opposite.
Right. So you went to just being 2 days off to now being like 20 days off or 15 days off. See? So Lucifer steps his fight game up. As your level increases, so does his fight game against you increase. Very good point, bro. Go ahead.
A year is determined by the Earth's rotation around the sun. This orbit around the sun takes normally 12 moons, or rather 12 months. We get our change in season as the Earth tilts either toward or away from the sun.
All right. So then we know that this orbit is not a complete circle. This is why they ended up with the super moon and things like that, because the orbit is not a complete circle. As certain parts of that orbit, as those things get close, whether it's the moon or the Earth getting closer to the sun, things get brighter. This is why you had a brighter moon, and they say, oh, this is the super moon. As it gets closer, you're going to see it better. So when we deal with the Earth's rotation or orbit around the sun, at certain parts, at each one of these parts that they call their solstice and equinoxes, these are seasonal changes, because at this point, the Earth tilts either toward or away from the sun. And if you look at this orbit and you look at December, you can understand why it's cold. This is when it's furthest away from the sun, and then it tilts away from it. So then as you get to the equinox, this is why things change, and they say, okay, this is the first day of spring. Once you get over to this next spot, now you're getting in a closer range to the sun, and now you start having growth. When you get to this part on June, you notice that now it tilts toward it. So now we get even hotter. So each one of these things is basically explained in Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 18. This is Yahweh's universal law. This law has absolutely nothing to do with being Israel. This law has something to do with being on his planet. Go ahead.
Genesis 7, verse 11.
Yeah, we're going to read this, and you don't have to turn to it because we got it on this graphic. Genesis chapter 7 and verse 11.
In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened.
Right. And the point that we have to make here, now here in the time of Noah, they understood days, months, and years, even though Israel and the law code does not yet exist. There is a universal law code that is common among all that are on the earth. These laws are generally accepted in all cultures, although these things have been altered over time to fit the various cultures of the earth. The concepts remain constant. Before an official law code was given unto Israel, we find certain laws already in effect. Let's go to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12, and let's read verses 10 through 20.
And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold now, I know that you are a fair woman to look upon.
Now, what we first of all have to deal with is that it was customary for the children of Israel to go down into Egypt whenever there was an issue. And understanding that Egypt is the land of Ham, of burnt face people, when you deal with the Jewish, they're going to try to tell you that there were no darker skinned people in that part of Africa, that you know, all the dark skinned people were in South Africa. But just reading this book, we can go ahead and set that as a lie. So this is normal for our people to go down into Egypt to seek help. Go ahead.
Maybe just to touch on what you're talking about, the land that was given to Israel was Canaan land.
Mm-hmm.
And Canaan came from who?
Ham. His daddy was called Burnt Black. Simple as that. So, but what happens is the way the game is being played, whenever you mention those things, people will accuse you of being racist. But they can tell you every year about what happened to them. They can mention 1,000 times about the Holocaust, but never mention the things leading up to the Holocaust. Just tell you the parts that they want to tell you. But nobody ever accuses them of using the race card. But as soon as you start talking about who you are, then it gets thrown up at you, and you got to know how to combat that. Go ahead.
Verse 12. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see you, that they shall say, This is his wife. And they will kill me, but they will save you alive. Say, I pray you, you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and my soul shall live because of you. And it came to pass that, when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman that she was very fair.
Mm-hmm.
The princes also of Pharaoh saw her, and commended her before Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house.
So he know enough about these Egyptians that they gonna see this woman, and we're gonna have some problems. Go ahead.
And he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, and he asses, and men servants, and maid servants, and she asses, and camels. And Yahweh plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that you have done unto me?
What is this that you have done unto me? Go ahead.
Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why said you, She's my sister? So I might have taken her to me to wife. Now therefore behold your wife, take her, and go your way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had.
So then what we have to look at then is, here is a universal law before any law code that a man wasn't supposed to touch another man's wife. There is no law code on the earth as far as Israel. Israel does not exist as a nation. Yet even the heathen Pharaoh, who thought he was a god, who didn't even give himself any limitations. I mean, you can't get no more arrogant than I'm a god. And the God said, man, why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Man, I might got out of all kind of trouble, man. So even the heathen God understood that that's universal law. They didn't need a law code to understand that this wasn't right. Now let's go to Esther chapter 9.
Esther chapter 9 and verse 1. Now in the 12th month, that is, the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Yehudis hoped to have power over them, though it was turned into the contrary, that the Yehudis had rule over them that hated them. The Yehudis gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people.
Right. So what we're about to read now, and a lot of other things, when you go and look at a lot of holy day calendars and whatnot, you're going to run into some days that you've never heard of. And what you're going to, have to understand is what Israel has a tendency to do is when we run up on certain situations, we want to memorialize that situation by a feast. And then at that point, some end up throwing these in with Yahweh's feast days. Go ahead.
Verse 3. And all the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies, and officers of the king helped the Yehudis, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Yehudis smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Yehudis slew and destroyed 500 men. And Parashandatha, and Dalphon, and Asphatha, and Paratha, and Adalia, and Aridatha, and Paramashta, and Aresai, and Aridai, and Vaazatha, the 10 sons of Haman the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Yehudis, slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand.
Right. So then when you start seeing, when you run into some of these other holy day calendars, you're going to see Purim on there. And you're going to always see it when you're dealing with the Jewish people. And what does it do? It helps keep a lot of people in a vengeance state. Because keeping this day is all about getting vengeance on your enemies. So keeping this, you would understand why when you go out on the corner and them people yelling at everybody, they keep these days. When you go and look at the Jewish and they're constantly trying to annihilate the Palestinians, we talking about people who got homemade weapons and rocks and sticks, and they got missiles that turn corners. But all those people keep this day so that every year they have a memorial of destroying their enemies. And then they emphasize destroying their enemies every year, building up this anger and pride in the destruction. So when you run up on somebody on the corner and they have all of this rah-rah stuck up in them, understand how they got it. Because they pick these certain things out of here and they want to make sure that they memorialize these things. And as we go on, I'm going to show you why we don't deal with it. Go ahead.
Verse 11. On that day the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, The Yehudis have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your petition? And it shall be granted you. Or what is your request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, If it please the king, let it be granted to the Yehudis, which are in Shushan, to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree. And let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Yehudis that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hand. But the other Yehudis that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together, and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000. But they laid not their hands on the prey. On the 14th day of the month Adar, on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Verse 17, On the 13th day of the month Adar, on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Yehudis that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Yehudis of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another.
So now this is turned into an all-out, little feast and thankfulness about killing. Now, a lot of these things are only even possible because we didn't do what it was we were supposed to do. So we end up in captivity. Then we end up being saved from the captivity or some kind of destruction. And then we want to turn that into a feast day. When what you should have done is kept the things that you were originally given right. And then you wouldn't have been in captivity in the first place to need saving. But you see how we do? We're going to do wrong. Then when we get saved, we're going to glorify the day that we were saved from the wrong. How about rewind, not do the wrong? Go ahead.
And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Yehudis that were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly.
Now, pause. Understand why, they have to keep it a feast of gladness, blah, blah, blah. Hey, they can't keep anything else. They're not near any temple. They in captivity. So then what we do, we take the things that we done brought out of captivity. Then when we get our land back, now you got real holy days to keep. What you still keeping that for? No, we're going to bring this with us. Because we want to keep this in our mind just in case we have to kill anybody else. We want to have us a happy day of killing. We need to keep it right here and right here, right in our hearts. Right. There ain't no reason to keep that no more once they set back up in the land. You got Yahweh's holy days. What you bring that back for? Go ahead.
As the days wherein the Yehudis rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Yehudis undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them.
Right, so now we're going to turn this into a Hebrew Christmas. We sending gifts. We singing Purim carols. Right. Go ahead.
Because Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Yehudis, had devised against the Yehudis to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Yehudis, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows.
It was one of the things that we were talking about before about, Shlomo was not, his real name. His real name was Yedidiah. Esther is not her real name. This shows commonly what our people have to do being among the heathen, that we got a heathen name and then we got a Hebrew name. Do y'all know her Hebrew name? How many people know her Hebrew name? See, that's how the heathen work. You remember the things of the heathen, but the things of your culture get pushed back. Her real name Hadassah. But being among, see, that's what helped them not knowing. Hold your place right there. I think it's
couple books back.
Read verse Esther chapter 2 and verse 7.
Esther 2 and 7.
And see, this is what happens to us all the time.
Verse 7. And he brought up Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter. For she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter.
Right. So then when you get down to a lot of these things, this ends up being the name that is pushed out, the heathen name, so that eventually they can give the major characters a heathen likeness. See, if a brother named Kunta Kinte, it's hard to show him white. It's hard. You're going to have a hard time presenting a white Kunta Kinte. Now, once you change his name to Toby, now you can present this white picture and say, look, there go Toby. But ain't nobody going to believe you mean to tell me that this white boy named Kunta. That ain't going to fly. So before they change the likeness, they always change the name first. Then afterwards, they change the likeness so that you won't believe that any of people that are in this book look like you. Now, you're going to find some other things in here connected with this Purim, destruction of Nicanor. Now we're talking about the killing of certain other people connected with these things, and then the Day of Simon. We go from, most of this stuff can be found in the Apocrypha, but do understand, we had already been told from the beginning that we were going to have to go through these things. Now, we spend a lot of time celebrating and commemorating days and valiant acts of heroism of our people that are made possible only because of our disobedience to Yahweh our Elohim. If you notice, most of these acts came about as we were in captivity or were under siege by another nation. Yah had already warned us of these things by the prophets, but losing sight of the big picture was not an uncommon thing among Israel. Now, I want to, if we look at our holy days here, you're going to, first of all, what we look at is there's 7 days in creation, and Yahweh has given us 7 holy days. When you start to examine the holy days of other calendars, they have all kinds of days that are in there that have nothing to do with Yahweh our Elohim. But because we, have accepted, the ways of the nations, we put all of these things in here. Now, when you look at the vernal equinox was March 20th. Now, this is where the heathen has always used how we calculate Passover. They use that to deal with Easter, and it is the only time that they use that calculation. That's why Easter is the only Christian holiday that moves. They have to make sure that it stays in that season. So they wait into the vernal equinox, and then they get that first Sunday that comes after this, dealing with this full moon, which is interesting because now you got Israel who's all of a sudden dealing with this full moon. This is a Christian concept. Some stuff that they had been doing. But knowing one thing, the Christians at least understood, if we go and use the full moon, we know that that's going to, because they're going to start us at new moon, then you count 14 days. That means you at the full moon. So without explaining Passover and how to count, they knew exactly what they were doing to try and keep Easter near Passover. That's why some years you'll look up and Easter and Passover on the same day. It all depends on where the new moon falls. So April 5th, our New Year is going to be April 5th, Friday at 8 p.m. This is one day, like I said, we will not have a class that night. It will be just a celebration. And I will finish everything that I'm doing the day before so that I don't have to run home because of where it falls. It's on a Friday night. You know, this gives us the opportunity. We know that as Hebrews, we had to stop hanging out on Friday night, but we're gonna hang out this Friday night. And Yahweh's calendar is the one that said that we can hang out on this Friday night, because we gonna hang out here. So April 5th, Friday. So going back to the question about the full moon new year, hopefully, you know, there's enough understanding to see that that's not possible, that people have changed their new moon into a full moon. But this whole thing of just changing something and making it into something holy is not new unto Israel. Let's go to Matthew chapter 17. Matthew chapter 17, and we're going to read verses 1 through 6.
Matthew chapter 17 and verse 1. And after 6 days Yahshua takes Cephas, Jacob, and Johanan his brother, and brings them up into an high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them. And his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moshe and Elias talking with him.
Now here come Israel.
Then answered, go ahead.
No, here go Israel. Now we're going to take this event, and now we're going to want to make something out of it. Go ahead.
Then answered Cephas, and said unto Yahshua, Adonai, it is good for us to be here. If you will, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moshe, and one for Elias.
Right. See, that's the same thing that Israel has been guilty of from the beginning. We see something, let's make something out of it. See, this is our shindiggery. See, we just want to make a shindig out of anything. Ain't taking care of the stuff we supposed to be taking care of. But soon as something happens, let's make a shindig. Hey, and these our top people right here. This ain't just some people. These are the ones that he said, oh, you're going to be the rock on which I'm going to form my church. The rock is trying to get involved in shindiggery. Go ahead.
While he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud, which said, This is my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. Hear you him.
In other words, Yahweh got pissed off. Man, did I ask y'all to make 3 tabernacles? Did I ask you to make some other day? Did I ask you to set up anything else? But this is us. We want to make a shindig out of anything. And we get so involved in it that we stop doing the stuff we're supposed to be doing. Let's make 3 tabernacles. You got the son of Elohim before you. You're looking at your maker. And you're trying to set up a tabernacle for 2 other individuals. And it done pissed their dad off. Man, I sent my son to come die for you. You talking about some 3 tabernacles? Man, somebody get these people up in front of me before I do something too. But that's us. That's us. And we ain't changed. From the beginning of this book to the end of this book to right now, we'll still do it. Get involved in some shindiggery and be late for all the stuff we're supposed to be late to. Well, we supposed to be at. We got to stay focused. Let's go to Luke chapter 16. Go ahead, bro.
It also goes to show you that sometimes it's necessary to cut people off while they're in the middle of talking foolishness. Because it says while he was yet speaking. He hadn't finished. Yahweh cut him off in the middle of his speech.
And see, that goes to show that why other people should be doing when they find themselves in the middle of shindiggery. Because when them people start talking and you don't say nothing, guess what's happening? Other people are being convinced by the shit. Oh, yeah, maybe we should build. See, if Yahweh didn't step in, one brother might have been already going to go get some rocks. Yeah, we're going to go and build this thing. We're going to make 3 tabernacles. Then Yahweh come in and shake and scare the hell out of them. Now they're like, okay, well, let's leave that alone then. But what happens if don't nobody say something? See, all the times Yahweh ain't finna come out and say nothing. You standing in Yahweh's stead. So if you find yourself in the middle of shindiggery and they start talking some strange stuff, Yahweh expecting you to step up and say, no, man, that ain't what we supposed to be doing. We fellowshipping, but now we taking the fellowshipping on another level. We're supposed to be dealing with Yahweh's stuff. So let's fellowship ourselves right on where the hell we supposed to be and go do what we supposed to be doing instead of now we going to set up some tabernacles over here. See? Yahweh may be expecting you to be the voice of reason. So are you, as my elder would always ask, are you comforting the people or are you seeking to be comforted? That's a question you got to ask yourself. Go ahead, brother. Luke chapter 16. And let's start that at verse 19.
Verse 19. There was a certain rich man, which was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fared sumptuously every day. And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate, full of sores, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores.
Right. And he desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. He's desiring to be fed with the crumbs. That don't mean the rich man gave it to him. Go ahead.
And it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And in the grave he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send me Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water, and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame.
So now he's giving this parable and saying, okay, let's look at the difference between how these people lived their life and then how they had to deal with judgment because of how they lived their life. Go ahead.
And pardon me, I said grave, the lake of fire.
This is definitely, normally it's dealing with the grave, but right now he is dealing with punishment. Okay? So normally when you see hell, they are dealing with grave. But when you're talking about fire and torment, that is the lake of fire that they're dealing with there. Go ahead.
Verse 25. But Abraham said, Son, remember that you in your lifetime received your good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and you are tormented.
Right, it's your turn. And don't nobody believe their turn is coming. And it is amazing that although this person has lived deliciously and did everything that they wanted to do, now they want help from the same poor man that they wouldn't even throw crumbs to. And actually feel like they right. When they desire their help, tell them to come just give me some water to do those. I'm so hot. I'm so hot. Wait a minute. Hold on, let's back up a little bit. Remember when you was eating steak and lamb and you know what I'm talking about? And remember that man was begging, trying to get just the crumb. Let me get the leftover. Can I get the shank bone? Yeah, let me get a little bone. You know what I'm talking about? No, you didn't want to hear none of that. But now you hot. Now you want the same poor man to go get you a drink of water. Right. It lets you know the selfishness of man. So selfish that he didn't even think nothing about his request. There should have been something in you that knew that your request was wrong. How is it you asking him for what you wouldn't give to him? And you still don't see nothing wrong with it. Go ahead.
And beside all this, between us and you there's a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come from thence.
So letting them know that if you end up in this lake of fire, ain't no need of calling nobody, because can't nobody come get you. Go ahead.
Then he said, I pray you therefore, Father, that you would send him to my father's house. For I have 5 brethren, that he may testify unto them, lest they also come into this place of torment.
Right. Now, I wouldn't give you jack. Okay? And if you watch, you'll find people operate like that today. They come in, they have all kind of demands. Oh, I don't eat this type of food. Oh, I don't eat this kind of thing. Oh, no, I need this prepared a certain kind of way. When it's daytime to bring something, they bring some junked up high fructose corn syrup, jacked up mess and throw it on the table. Wait a minute. You had absolutely nothing but demands for everybody else when you was eating. But then when it was your turn to bring some food, you brought the worst crap you could find. And then bought the cheap brand. I said, damn, is that value? Is that value? Right. And it'll be the richest one in here. But had all kind of demands. Oh, I don't eat such and such. No. None of that has touched these lips. Right. Until it's daytime to bring some food. And you watch that mess. Right. Jake. If you're looking for Jake, all you gotta do is open the book. You're gonna find Jake. But see, you gotta pay attention when you look and you read and you go, Jake. Hey, look, Jake, right here. Right. Go ahead.
Verse 29. Abraham says unto him, they have Moshe and the prophets. Let them hear them.
Right. Right. Send somebody. Let me see. Look at the overgrown selfishness. All right, I ain't did nothing for you, but I got 5 brothers. Let him go and testify to them. At least they come to this place of torment. So go save my family. What y'all sure say? Abraham says unto them, they have Moshe and the prophets. Let them hear them. Let them hear the prophet. Wait a minute. He just told them, let them read the Old Testament. Oh, they want to learn about salvation? Let them read the Old Testament. They want to learn how to walk? Let them read the Old Testament. Go ahead.
You know, it's interesting because you were talking about how he didn't feel any kind of way to ask the question for Lazarus to come help him. That's that self-entitlement from the finances that he have.
Right.
And see, people don't understand that you allow that to have you with the same type of heart and thought process.
Right. So we got black people walking around with white privilege. That deep right there. Go get this for me. What? You tripping, right? And feel like they right in doing so.
Because they see you as the servant.
Right. You the servant. Right. And I let it come out their mouth. Come here, little servant girl. Come here. Put me some ketchup on this plate. Right. And that's why they on the outside of that door. Read, man.
And he said, no, Father Abraham, but if one went on to them from the dead, they will repent.
No, they won't. No, they won't. No, they won't. He can crawl out of the graves. Come here, my child. You dirty. You just got that dirt on you. I'm not going to do that. I'm clean. It's linen. Right. Full of demands. Right. They ain't going to do nothing. Because they really don't want their salvation. It is not important unto them. What is important unto them is their status right now. But we're going to see if all your status going to help you when you wake up the second time. See if you can buy off Yahshua. Because you know all this stuff is his, right? So you know it's very, very difficult to bribe somebody with stuff that's theirs. Look, I'll give you some money. I make money. That don't mean nothing to me. No, all this stuff is mine. The paper that they printed that money on, the gold that they used to back it, the oil that's in the ground, all that's my stuff. You can't bribe me with my stuff. It's already mine. Yahshua won't be bought. Go ahead.
And he said unto him, if they hear not Moshe and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead.
And we know they're not going to hear Moshe and the prophets because they don't think that they are subject to the law. They don't think they are subject to rules. That's why they think they can do anything and you need to accept it. So they're not going to be persuaded though one rose from the dead. That is not going to persuade them. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 18. He says, let them hear Moshe. Then you find out Moshe says, let them hear Yahshua. So you go from one end and you're going to hear the same thing you hear on the other end. Deuteronomy chapter 18. And let's read verses 15 through 22.
Yahweh your Elohim will raise up unto you a prophet from the midst of you, of your brethren, like unto me. Unto him you shall hearken.
Yahweh your Elohim will raise up unto you a prophet from the midst of you, of your brethren, like unto me. Him shall you hearken. You shall listen to him. And he gonna be like me. Like I have talked to Yahweh face to face, so shall he. Go ahead.
According to all that you desired of Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yahweh my Elohim, neither let me see his great fire any more, that I die not. And Yahweh said unto me, they have well spoken that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto you, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him.
In other words, there's going to have to be a mediator in between me and Israel. And this is not what we want to hear. We want to hear that we can individually just go to Yahweh at our own will, at our own doing. No. Because we spoke this in the beginning, it automatically set forth that there was going to be a mediator between us and Yahweh. But now we want to act like we don't remember saying it. We don't remember reading it. That's why you got the people that say, no, I'm just going to go to Yahweh. You know what? I don't need to deal with them. I'm going to go to Yahweh myself in my living room. My personal Lord and Savior. Right. And you can't find that nowhere in this book where you got a personal Lord and Savior. Where you got some kind of personal thing. Like he just for you. He ain't gonna deal with nobody else. He ain't gonna answer nobody else's prayers. He ain't gonna listen to nobody else. He is just for you. Right. Selfishness. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's where you also bust up that Christian doctrine, because when the pastor comes and say, I talked to God last night, somebody need to say, according to this, he said there'll always be a mediator between him and us. So how you talk to him directly?
Well, he said he the mediator. See, that's why he said, see, y'all can't talk to him because y'all don't go hata wata bata. See? Right. Go ahead.
Verse 19. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I'll require it of him.
So he's going to speak my words, but they're going to come out of his mouth. Now, can you recognize Yahweh's words even though they come out of the mouth of another individual? That's what seems to get us caught up, because we're so busy watching the person, and we have large respect to persons. See, if somebody speaks a certain kind of English, if they speak articulate and they got a couple of degrees behind their name, oh, we want to hear them. And they just dumb as a box of rocks. They don't know nothing about this word, but they sound good. See? But that's who we want to listen to. Do you recognize when them words come out of their mouth? Wait a minute. That That ain't Yahweh's word. That ain't what the word said. Do you recognize that? Now, History Channel before had put out the whole thing of the Bible. Now they got a new one coming out about Jesus. Guess who the executive producer is? Smiley boy. The one.
Oh.
Joel Osteen. Yeah, Smiley putting it on. And you know it's finna be the most rosy red. Oh God. That's all he do, smile. His face ought to hurt. That's all he do is smile for 2 hours straight. Nothing ever bad happens. Everything's got a nice story at the end. Right? So now you have, now consider this. This is a channel known for telling history. But now you got individual people paying money to tell their own version of that story. And people are going to accept it because it comes on the History Channel. But this is a man telling his story. See? And of course, you know everybody on it white. Of course, Jesus white. There ain't a chocolate chip nowhere in this vanilla sea they got going on. So once again, to help you believe that you were nowhere in the middle of Africa while all of this was going on. Right. Go ahead, bro.
But the prophet, which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. And if you say in your heart, how shall we know the word which Yahweh hath not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of Yahweh, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which Yahweh has not spoken. But the prophet has spoken it presumptuously, you shall not be afraid of him.
Right. So this tells you something about just dealing with the prophet. It says you shall not be afraid of him. People are not afraid of the prophet. Not today's prophet. Because all they prophesy is nice things. Why would you be afraid of somebody who gonna come and tell you, you gonna own a business, you gonna get all kind of money, you finna get a Cadillac with some 20s? Why would you be afraid of that? That ain't nothing to be afraid of. But if he come and say, judgment coming to you for what you did on such and such, oh, now that make people shaking their boots. Because first of all, you ain't even know nobody knew you did whatever that is. And he coming out talking about judgment for it. So when they said, hey, the prophet gonna be here next week, I ain't coming. I ain't gonna be there. See, the people start, when Samuel went to a town, they got scared. Samuel, we love you, but why you here? Why you here? I mean, if you're not accustomed to seeing your manager or boss, and all of a sudden they show up, you're like, hey, how you doing? Why you here? No, you don't never really come here. Why you here? Well, no, I'm just coming. Well, no, I don't like you being here. I ain't there. Why you here? Because normally bad stuff happens when you come here. Like somebody finna get fired. Something finna happen. So they was on the edge when the prophet showed up. That's not what happened today. These so-called prophets show up on Sunday morning and everybody's singing and clapping. Because now one prophecy has come out of there where somebody paid their little $1,000, went up front, and they said, you finna burn in hell. Not one of them. Not one. That's how you know they lying. Because not one bad thing has ever been said about any of those people who received their prophecy. There's something seriously wrong about that. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 3. I mean, we can tell just dealing with regular stuff. Ain't no such thing as 100% on anything. You go in the church, you ain't gonna find everybody in there good. You go in the gang, everybody in it ain't bad. There's some people that didn't even want to be in the gang. There's some people that's trying to get out of it now.
Hebrews chapter 3 and verse 1. Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, the Mashiach Yahshua, who was faithful to him that appointed him, as also Moshe was faithful in all his house. For this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moshe, inasmuch as he who has built the house has more honor than the house. For every house is built by some man, but he that built all things is Elohim. And Moshe verily was faithful in all his house, as a servant for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken after. But the Mashiach as a son over his own house, whose house are we, if we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end.
Right, if. See? You can't just do things any old kind of way, however you want to do them, and then talking about you are a member of his house. Go ahead.
Wherefore, as the Holy Spirit says, today if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness.
Right, and what was hardened? Their hearts, because they couldn't hear and receive instruction. Everything that was given unto them, they wanted to deal with it the way they wanted to deal with it. Yahweh trying to get the captive mindset away from them, but they're so accustomed to being slaves that they couldn't get that slave mentality away from them. So he said, you know what, I'm just going to have to let this generation die and let a generation who has not been a captive, just let them come up. And they will come up with a different mindset of freedom, because these people are just being, they're accustomed to being ruled over and being ruled over rigorously. Go ahead.
When your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation, and said, they do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living Elohim.
Right. And an evil heart of unbelief can be persuaded. See, you can be right on that edge and be in the wrong shindig and let somebody convince you off into some mess. And now just standing on that edge, now you're sitting there left with an evil heart of unbelief. And that ain't what you had before you got there. You got convinced when you got there. See? Because see, that smooth talk come across real good. That's why you got to know in certain places, you know what? No, I'm not going there. Because I already know there ain't nothing but me falling at that place right there. Some people got to know themselves good enough so that you don't put yourself in situations where now you got to come and cry all over Yahweh's altar. There's some stuff you got to start figuring out beforehand. How is it you didn't know you were going to end up falling when you went there? See, that's that thing we convince ourselves. Yeah, I can go to this beach party. I'm going to be fine. I can go to this beach party. I'm fine. Now, you know you was a whoremonger before you got anywhere in it where you already know you had a horse problem, okay? No, you convince yourself. No, I can go. And then you sitting up there sweating bullet, looking like TD Jake. Looking at everything right. You shouldn't have been there in the first place because you already know you had a horse problem. What you go there for? See, you needed to know enough about yourself. When everybody say, hey man, I'll see y'all when you get back. Brother, why you ain't going? Because I got a little problem. And this is not going to help my little problem. See? You can't keep falling to the same stuff over and over again. I'm not saying you're not going to fall. I'm just not going to keep falling to the same stuff. I may fall, but it won't be to that. I may fall and fall over here. I ain't going to fall to that right there because I already know, hey, I ain't got no business being right here. So I know enough about myself. I ain't got no business being right here. Go ahead.
Hebrews chapter 3 and verse 13. But exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. For we are made partakers of the Mashiach, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. While it is said today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation. For some, when they had heard, did provoke, howbeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moshe. But with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcass fell in the wilderness? And to whom sware he that they should not enter into his rest? But to them that believe not. So we say that they could not enter in because of unbelief.
Right. And we have to consider the way that unbelief is. People won't just say that they don't believe. Their actions show that they have unbelief. See, even before the Mashiach would do any miracles, he said, do you believe I can do this? And why you got to ask me that? Because your unbelief will limit what I can do with you. Here it is. He got all power in his hand. But guess what? You got a little power in your hand. Because if you have unbelief, you can null and void what I'm about to do. That's why before we do a baptism, I ask the question, do you believe that Yahshua the Messiah died for your sin? See, the stuff that we're doing, we just not doing because we thought it was some cool stuff to say. There's actually a reason behind everything we do. We're not just saying it because we thought it sounded good. The Messiah would ask this with all power in his hand. Do you believe? Because if you don't believe, you're already limiting what's about to happen right now. Go ahead.
Let us therefore fear, lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, and if you should seem to come short of it. For unto us was the gospel preached as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. For we which have believed do enter into rest, as he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and Elohim did rest the seventh day from all his works.
Right. So then even when we deal with the Sabbath, this is based on the creation of the whole earth. But what happens is people are going to come to you and say, well, a different day was set forth when Christ did what he did. And the question is, are we still on earth? So when Christ did what he did we move somewhere? Or are we still on the same earth? Okay, then this has something to do with creation. Go ahead.
And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest, seeing therefore it remains that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief. Again, he limits a certain day, saying in Dawid, today, after so long a time, as it is said, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts.
If you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. And each time, it's a hardened heart that kicks against all the principles of Yahweh our Elohim. It's a hardened heart that gets people to that, well, I just can't, do such and such. Or I just can't believe on that level. Or I just can't work on that level. Right. It's a hardened heart. Go ahead.
For if Yahshua had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day?
Right. Now, this says in verse 8, for if Yahshua had given them rest. Now, because we know that anytime we see Jesus, we understand that that's Yahshua. But what this does is lets us know what they got here in verse 8. They're talking about Joshua. But then they says here, for if Jesus had given them rest. Then it's got a little I. If you got a study Bible, it's got a little I right there. And in the middle, if you go to I, it says Joshua. Now, how they make the mistake between Jesus and Joshua? Because everywhere they saw Yahshua, they went and changed it to Jesus. And what they forgot, it was more than one Yahshua. So they were so hell bent on putting the name of their pagan god in there that they completely missed that they done put the wrong thing in there. But Yahweh let them do it so that we will understand this is what they're doing. They're trying to change the names of the main characters of the book. See, it's too many names in here to change all of them. But if you can change the major characters, if you can first turn Yahshua into Jesus and make him Greek, then you can make all the rest of the disciples Greek. Then you can make all the rest of the people Greek. Now you can change the look and ethnicity of all those people. All by starting with one. Go ahead.
There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of Elohim. For he that is entered into his rest, he also has ceased from his own works, as Elohim did from his. Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief.
Right. So that when people start trying to convince us into doing other things, we have to make sure that we don't fall in that part of unbelief. Remember, if man, Adam, had decided not to go along with his wife, there would have been an intercessor in the house. All he had to do was make that decision. He could have restored his house. Go ahead.
For the word of Elohim is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit, and of the joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart.
Right. Intents of the heart. Not just what you do, but why you did it. Go ahead.
Neither is there any creature that is not manifest in his sight, but all things are naked and opened unto the eyes of him with whom we have to do. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Yahshua the Son of Elohim, let us hold fast our profession. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly onto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need.
Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. A lot of times, even when we deal with this fellowshipping amongst one another, sometimes we have information and things that could help our fellow brothers and sisters. But what will happen is sometimes people will be in a certain need or in a certain situation and will not open their mouth. And the person sitting next to you has everything needed to help you out of your situation. It is utterly amazing. Sometimes you talk to somebody and find out that they've been in a situation for months. How the hell we didn't know you've been in that situation for months? You know, if you had said something, you know, what's his name them got a such and such down there? What? Yeah, you could have been out of that situation. That's what the fellowshipping is supposed to be for. But when the fellowshipping turned into shindiggery and we just hanging out, now you never find out the things that you're supposed to find out. What you end up doing is gossiping. Never knowing, hey, you can help this person and that person over there can help this person. And at the end of the day, you got two more people whole from excess stuff that you were probably going to throw away anyway. Let us consider these things as we move closer and closer to our holy days, and understand that these are Yahweh's days that he has allowed for us to take part in. If you have any other questions about especially this full moon, New Year, oxymoron, then send us an email or whatnot. But do understand on as we celebrate our New Year, you will not be able to contact us because I will have a cup of wine in this hand, all right? Because I drink with the left and I leave the pinky out when doing so. Okay, so I'm just letting you know. Don't even do it because you're not gonna reach me. So send those emails beforehand, because we don't get to hang out on Fridays very much. Okay, so we gonna get it in on this one. That's all that we're gonna do. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.